In this video, I'm going to be ranking every single Power 5 football team for 2024. Now, this is going to include any team in the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the remaining 2 teams from the Pac-12, which is now the Pac-2, the SEC, and Notre Dame. 70 teams in total. So without further ado, let's get into it. Coming in at number 70, we have Vanderbilt, destined to always be a doormat team in the SEC. They lost several key players that were promising for their future, including London Humphreys and A.J. Swan. Now, they tried to use the transfer portal to repair that roster a little bit. We'll see what happens this season. At number 69, we have Houston. For the Cougars, they welcome in Willie Fritz and a new era of Houston football. However, it's going to take some time to rebuild this team. Dana Holgorsen left the roster in a pretty rough spot, and there wasn't enough transfer portal work done by Fritz to turn things around instantly. At number 68, we have Virginia. Tony Elliott enters a big year 3 with a ton of returning production, but not all returning production is necessarily good. They did go 3-9 last season. However, they did show some things at the end of the year that make you think maybe something is working. Tony Muskett and Anthony Calandria are both exciting choices at quarterback, so we'll see what happens for Virginia. At number 67, we have Wake Forest, who had a really dreadful season in the ACC last year that they're hoping is more of a fluke than a trend. However, with Clawson's style of coaching at Wake Forest, it feels like in the portal era, it may be a trend. At 66, we have UCLA, who made one of the most questionable and baffling hires of the offseason by hiring Deshaun Foster, who has no coordinator or head coach experience, and this roster pretty severely depleted, especially on defense. At 65, we have Stanford. Now, there's actually been a lot of good things happening at Stanford. Troy Taylor taking the recruiting and putting it in a pretty good spot. And overall, there's players to be excited about, like Alec Ayomanor, who's one of the most exciting young receivers in the country. So don't sleep on Stanford entirely. However, they are at 65. At number 64, we have Boston College. They had to go through a coaching change, bringing in Bill O'Brien after Jeff Hafley took the Packers defensive coordinator job, and he's done a decent job of building a staff. However, they have a much tougher schedule this season, and their inflated win total last year means that a lot of Boston College fans will probably be disappointed with the results this season. Coming in at 63, we have Mississippi State. Jeff Lebby takes over for his first season with the Bulldogs, and it's going to take time to implement the scheme and play the way he wants to play. At 62, we have Oregon State. The Beavers are a team that lost a ton in the portal. They did offset those losses slightly, but still the roster is significantly worse than last season. At 61, Cincinnati. The Bearcats are a team that just doesn't stand out in the Big 12, and I'm not too confident in Scott Satterfield's ability to rebuild a program, so I don't have a ton of faith in Cincinnati. At number 60, we have Arizona State. They had an injury-riddled season last year, but Kenny Dillingham showed some promise as a coach. The staff is sound, and they're hoping that better injury luck this season can improve their record. We'll see if it does. At 59, we have Washington State. Jake Dickert and the Cougars playing a mostly Mountain West schedule this year will certainly help them, and they could easily improve their record because of that. Last season, they were arguably the best 5-7 team in the country. At number 58, we have BYU. The Cougars are a team that at the line of scrimmage has just struggled to get up to speed in Big 12 play. We'll see if they've met it this year, but a lot of what they're banking on is their own internal development. Kalani Sitake, pretty good at that. At number 57, we have Pitt. Pitt had a disastrous 2023. Things completely fell apart, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. They're hoping to right some of those wrongs this season. They bring in a shiny new offensive coordinator and are hoping that they can finally turn in a net positive offense and get back to the winning that Pat Narduzzi does best. Coming in at number 56, we have Indiana. The Hoosiers bring in Kurt Cignetti from James Madison, who brings a slew of exciting transfers with him, including Ohio quarterback Curtis Rourke, who is probably going to be calling plays under center. So Indiana has some reasons to be excited, but will probably take time to get their feet under them in the Big Ten. At 55 is Northwestern. They're coming off of an 8-win season and a surprising breakout year under David Braun. Braun has a chance to get his own recruiting class, his own legs under him, his own staff, so a lot of reasons to be excited. However, they had a very easy schedule. Things get tougher in 2024 for Northwestern. At 54, we have North Carolina. Mac Brown, and they're without Drake May, and I think after Drake May, they could have some growing pains figuring it out. Marion Hampton is one of the best running backs in the country, though. At Baylor at 53, you've got a team that brings in a new offensive coordinator in Jake Spavital that has to work. Dave Aranda's team has fallen from grace, and that Big 12 title just a couple of seasons ago seems more and more distant every year. At 52, we have Duke. First-year head coach Manny Diaz taking over for the Blue Devils, and he's hoping that he can start to implement his vision that he was putting in at Miami before he was kicked out for Mario Cristobal. At 51, we have TCU, the Horned Frogs, a confusing team. They went 5-7 last year, but were a really good 5-7 team that lost a lot of close games, pretty much the exact opposite of their miracle national title run. And so in 2024, Sonny Dykes and the internal people at TCU probably think they're capable of another run like 2022. At number 50, we have Purdue. Ryan Walters heads into his second season with the Boilermakers, and a lot of promising young players will have time to develop that could give Purdue a little bit more of an edge than they've had recently. Coming in at number 49, we have SMU. Their first season in the Power 5, and they actually have a pretty decent roster shaping up. Rhett Lashley, their coach, really utilizing that transfer portal, and it's going to pay dividends. However, there are some areas they're probably still lacking in, including their depth. At number 48, we have Minnesota. PJ Fleck and company looking to right the ship after a pretty disappointing 5-7 season that they were able to end with a bowl win at least. At number 47, we have Colorado. Coach Prime and company are probably going to be a very similar team to last season, maybe with a little bit better depth and maybe with a little bit better players at the skill possessions overall, but I'm still very concerned about Colorado's depth. As a whole, I think it doesn't measure up against their Big 12 competition and will take effect as the season goes on. At number 46, we have Illinois. Brett Bielema is a very underrated head coach, and yet Illinois had a disappointing season last year. As usual, I think this defense will be stocked with NFL talent, and they'll find a way to win some games with an offense led by Luke Altmaier. At number 45, we have Georgia Tech. Haynes King leads a very underrated and potent Georgia Tech offense. It's just going to be a matter of this defense getting their feet under them, figuring it out. If they can do that, Georgia Tech will be a sneaky team in the ACC. At 44, we have Cal, who weirdly enough is also an ACC team now. They've got a lot of pieces that could lead to them having a big year. Fernando Mendoza at quarterback, Jaden Ott at running back, and some key defensive players make me think that Justin Wilcox and Cal could have a pretty impressive debut season in the ACC. At number 43, we have the Washington Huskies. They lost every single starter from last season's team. It's unreal. It's unbelievable. It's unlike anything you've seen. Jed Fish doesn't bring enough of his guys in for his first season to make me believe that Washington can return to top 25 status. At number 42, we have Maryland. Mike Loxley's team is actually going to have an easier schedule with divisions being scrapped in the Big Ten, and they could parlay that into a really nice season. They did lose a lot of production this offseason and a lot of things that made them successful in the last couple years. At 41, we have Jonathan Smith's first season at Michigan State, and the Spartans have a lot of things moving in the right direction, including some promising young players like Aiden Childs at quarterback that could raise this team's ceiling if they play really well this year. At number 40, we have Arkansas. Very pivotal season for Sam Pittman's Hogs. They bring in a new offensive coordinator, a guy they're very familiar with in Bobby Petrino. And if he can get things to click on offense, Arkansas is going to be able to compete with anyone in that middle tier of the SEC. At number 39, we have the Florida Gators, just a spot above. It's a massive year 3 for Sunbelt Billy and the Florida Gators, and they have a brutal schedule. A team that could literally be a top 25 team and still sustain like 5 losses because of their schedule. At number 38, we have South Carolina. The Gamecocks just a hair above those other two teams, not for the way their roster looks on paper, but because I just feel like this roster with guys like Lenore Sellers and Nick Harbor, young, gritty players all over this roster, is going to be able to play some Beamer ball, which just means doing stuff that you don't expect them to do, pulling upsets left and right. At number 37, we have West Virginia. Neil Brown's team had a really big breakout year last year. There's a lot of people that are high on the Mountaineers again this season, and I definitely think they're capable of making a run, but in a deep Big 12, it's going to be hard to find where they can push the margins. At 36, we have Syracuse. It's Fran Brown's first season with the Orange, and he has done some exciting stuff off the field. It's time to produce on the field, and with their talented transfers they've landed and recruiting additions, they're definitely capable of doing so. At number 35, we have Rutgers with a ton of stuff to like, including the second most returning production in the entire country and a schedule that doesn't feature Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State after they had to play all 3 of them last season. At 34, we have Central Florida. The Gus Bus is absolutely rolling. This team is humming along and recruiting and has a roster better than anything they've seen in their program's history. At number 33, we have Auburn. Hugh Freeze has acknowledged this team isn't in a position to contend for a title this year. However, they think they can win some big games. They've got a bunch of young players ready to contribute all over the roster, and they need Peyton Thorne to develop fast with these new weapons. At number 32, we have NC State. It's a team that a lot of people are pretty high on because not only do you have the base roster that is built to develop and play above their star ratings under Dave Doran, but you also have an influx of impressive transfer portal players, including Grayson McCall, who is destined to start for the Wolfpack. At number 31, we have the Kentucky Wildcats. They rebuilt this backfield, and Mark Stoops and company are set to do what they do at Kentucky, and that's make a bowl game and potentially go for even more. At number 30, we have Nebraska, the Cornhuskers, in a pivotal year 2 under Matt Rule. He has this roster in a place to compete. They have an outstanding defense. They have a new shiny quarterback in Dylan Raiola that they think can lead them to the promised land. At number 29, we have Texas Tech. The Red Raiders under Joey McGuire have been doing all the right things off the field. They're finally ready to see big results on the field. Look for Baron Morton to develop at quarterback and some of these weapons that they added like Jalen Conyers and Josh Kelly to really explode. Coming in at number 28, we have the Iowa Hawkeyes. Their defense will once again be elite, but a changing coordinator doesn't really answer a lot of the questions that they have offensively. They're hoping that some better injury luck at the very least will maybe help them with some of that. At number 27, we have USC. They're pretty much the opposite of Iowa. They're bound to have an elite offense. Miller Moss is going to step up. If he doesn't, it'll be Jaden Mayava. However, defensively, plenty of holes. They're undergoing an entire overhaul with DeAnton Lynn, the new defensive coordinator, and so that's something that could make their defense get worse before it gets better. At number 26, we have Virginia Tech. They have the most production returning of any team in college football. A lot to be excited about in Brent Pry's third season. At number 25, we have Oklahoma State. I have them considerably lower than some other people might have them. Conventional wisdom would tell you they've got a ton of returning production. They were in the Big 12 title game last year. They're bound to get better. However, I look at last year, it was pretty funky for Oklahoma State. They had to get a lot of things right, win a lot of close, random games. Their defense was very inconsistent. I don't see any of those holes getting completely patched this season, and they still have a very turnover-prone and inconsistent quarterback. So for Oklahoma State, I'm a little hesitant. However, I do trust Mike Gundy, why they have them in the top 25. At number 24, we have the Oklahoma Sooners. For the Sooners, they have concerns along the offensive line. They have a young quarterback that's not necessarily proven. He does have some weapons, and defensively, I think they'll be really stout. This will probably be the best defense we've ever seen under Brent Venables at Oklahoma. At number 23, we have the Arizona Wildcats. The Wildcats have some concerns, like 8 players lost from their defensive front. However, they will have a very excellent offense with Noah Fafita and Titairoa McMillan running it back. So look for Arizona to still be a fringe contender in the Big 12. At number 22, we have Texas A&M. They are a team that was looking for some substance over flash, and they got just that in Mike Elko. And in year 1, I don't think this is necessarily a huge project. I think you can win right away with the talent that's on this roster. At number 21, we have Wisconsin. The Badgers head into year 2 under Luke Fickell, and he's done a lot of work to make this team reflect more of his vision when he got to Madison in the first place. Last season, they tried to splice a couple different schemes, most of which wasn't what Fickell wanted to do, and I honestly think they'll get back to doing more of what Fickell wants, which will result in a better season in 2024. At number 20, we have LSU. Tons of concerns here, including that defensive line, including that secondary, including Garrett Nussmeier not necessarily being proven, but I do trust the offense will come along for LSU behind one of the best offensive lines in the entire country, which will help that greatly. At number 19, we have Louisville. They added another major portal class. However, last season their record was inflated a little bit by a pretty easy schedule. So this year, I think they'll be around the same in terms of ranking. At number 18, we have Kansas. The Kansas Jayhawks under Lance Leipold have had a near linear rebuild. It's been very impressive to watch. And this season, a lot of their talented players can stay healthy, like Devin Neal and Jalen Daniels. Kansas will be in a position to win some big games and make some big splashes. At number 17, we have the defending champion Michigan Wolverines. Their defensive line will be among the best in the country. They have an excellent secondary led by Will Johnson. Their linebacking core is solid. However, they're replacing the entire offensive line. They have questions at quarterback, to say the least. And at the skill players, nothing really pops off the page. Donovan Edwards obviously does, but outside of that, Michigan does have some significant questions offensively, and they do have to replace their defensive coordinator as well. So we'll see if the Wolverines are ready for an encore season. At number 16, we have Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish are eerily similar to 2023 Clemson. Everything checks the boxes on the field except for the skill positions, and everybody seems to assume that a new offensive coordinator will just fix those things, but you do need skill positions to win games, and Notre Dame is lacking in that department. At number 15, we have Clemson. The Tigers under Dabo Swinney continue to neglect the portal, and we'll see if that starts to affect them more and more on the field. They do still have a very talented roster. Coming in at number 14, we have Iowa State. I myself was shocked to see I had the Cyclones this high, but it's for good reason. They have a ton of returning production from a team that last season I think was pretty underrated. They only lost 3 conference games, 2 of which were to Oklahoma and Texas, who aren't there anymore. And they have a bunch of young players that are only going to get better in one of the best development programs in the country. I really think Iowa State can compete in this Big 12. At number 13, we have the Miami Hurricanes. Miami, certainly a team to watch out for. On paper, I think they're easily a top 10 team. There's just some coaching concerns in terms of game plan and errors that happen with this team sometimes, such as poorly timed turnovers. So for that, that's my one question mark with Miami. I think the talent is there across the board. At number 12, we have Kansas State. The Wildcats are a team and a program primed to go for another Big 12 title under Chris Kleiman. I think anytime they don't win it at their peak in the Big 12, it's probably a fluke. At number 11, we have Florida State. The Seminoles are a team that I think reloaded really well in the transfer portal. It's a tool that Mike Norvell has been using very effectively, and it's the thing that's given Florida State an edge over Clemson. At number 10, we have Tennessee. I really trust Nico Iamaleava, and I think that Tennessee can parlay an excellent offense into a really great season, especially if they're able to maintain any semblance of the same level defensively, specifically with their pass rush. At number 9, we have Missouri. They return a lot of the key pieces from a team that was extremely successful last season. They did lose their defensive coordinator, but I think they replaced him pretty effectively and have a very sound and talented staff in Missouri. So look for a solid encore season. At number 8, we have Utah. The Utah Utes are a team that I think is primed to win the Big 12 in their first season. Cam Rising comes back. I expect him to be healthy. I expect him to perform for the Utes. And overall, I just think Utah has the best roster in the Big 12. Coming in at number 7, we have Penn State. Some people have Penn State fatigue from seeing them up in like the top 8 of every preseason ranking. I have a little bit of it too myself, but Drew Aller's a quarterback that brings a bunch of experience back. He had a really solid season last year. The only games where he really faded, that Ohio State game, that Michigan game, they only play one of those 2 teams this year, and maybe that's all it takes for Penn State. The second they start making these 12-team playoffs, maybe the narrative around James Franklin will start to change. Coming in at number 6, we have Ole Miss. The Rebels under Lane Kiffin are all in on winning a national title this year. They really splurged through NIL in the portal, and they're in the best position their program has ever been in to win a national title in recent memory. Coming in at number 5, we have the Alabama Crimson Tide. Kalen DeBoer has built an absolutely elite staff in Tuscaloosa and did a great job of retaining talent on this squad. I really think that it's going to turn a positive result for him in year 1, and Alabama is still going to be able to compete for a national title. At number 4, we have Texas. Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns broke through for a Big 12 title and a playoff appearance last year. And this season, they're perfectly capable of winning the SEC in their first year. They are perfectly stocked and built at the line of scrimmage to compete in this conference. And it's going to be a rude awakening for any SEC team or fan that thinks Texas isn't ready. At number 3, we have the Oregon Ducks. The amount of transfer portal talent that they brought in to beef up this roster, pretty staggering stuff. They bring in Dylan Gabriel, Evan Stewart. They are really set and built to compete in the Big Ten. And the thing I like most of all from the Ducks is their elite depth at the defensive line. It's something that has been built with the SEC defensive lines in mind by Dan Lanning, a guy that was built in the SEC. And overall, Oregon is just primed and ready to compete for a Big Ten title and potentially a national title. At number 2, we have Ohio State. The Buckeyes, as many people saw, went all in as well in the portal. They bring in phenomenal prospects like Caleb Downs, who is one of the best defensive backs in the entire country. Julian Sayin, in case this Will Howard situation doesn't work out. They have Will Kaczmarek, an outstanding tight end from Ohio. They really did everything. Quinshon Judkins is another one I didn't even mention to come in at running back. It's ready to put them over the top. They also have a bunch of key returners. They have one of the best defensive lines, one of the best secondaries in the country. Jim Knowles' defense is finally clicking. If they can get that offense a little bit more effective this year, they have a very good shot at winning a national title. And coming in at number 1, we have the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia is arguably number 1 at essentially every position on the field except for maybe wide receiver and running back. However, even at those positions, they went out in the portal. They got Trevor Etienne. They got Colby Young. They got Benjamin Urasek. They got a guy like London Humphreys from Vanderbilt. And so the Georgia Bulldogs are a team that I think is the clear choice to win the national title this season. If you're trying to come up with a team, don't overthink it. It is the Georgia Bulldogs. That does it for my complete Power 5 power rankings, 1 through 70. Let me know down in the comments what your biggest gripe is, what you think about my logic, what you think about my rankings in general. And if you enjoyed the video, drop a like, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos, and let me know what you thought down in the comments.